Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a journey through time as we delve into the complex and fascinating relationship between two powerful nations, the United States and the United Kingdom. Linked by a common language, culture, and values, these nations have not always been allies. Instead, their history is marked by intense conflicts, fierce rivalries, and monumental struggles for power, independence, and respect. Through 10 historic conflicts, we'll explore the pivotal moments that shaped not only the destinies of these nations but also the course of world history. These are not merely stories of battles, they are tales of ideals, resilience, and transformation. From the cries of no taxation without representation in the Revolutionary War to the unity forged during World War II, each conflict teaches us valuable lessons about courage, diplomacy, and the enduring journey from rivals to partners. So, let's step back in time to witness these turning points that transformed enemies into allies. 1. The American Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783. Our story begins with the conflict that forever changed the course of history, the American Revolutionary War. Imagine colonial Boston in 1775, a bustling port city but one gripped by tension. British soldiers patrol the streets, enforcing the Crown's rules over the 13 American colonies. Yet, resentment is brewing. For years, Britain has levied heavy taxes on the colonies to offset its war debts. The famous Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts, and, perhaps most infuriatingly, the tax on tea are seen as an affront to the colonists' rights. The colonists rally around the powerful slogan "No taxation without representation," calling for a voice in the British Parliament. As tensions mount, a turning point arrives on April 19, 1775. British forces march toward Lexington and Concord, intending to seize colonial weapons and arrest revolutionary leaders. But the colonists are ready. Local patriots like Paul Revere race through the night to warn that the British are coming. As the redcoats arrive, they're met by American militia. A shot rings out, the shot heard round the world. This moment ignites a revolution, setting the colonies on a path toward independence. The Continental Army, led by George Washington, faces the daunting challenge of confronting the British Empire, the world's most powerful military force. Washington's ragtag forces endure unimaginable hardships. In the winter of 1777-78, at Valley Forge, the army faces freezing temperatures, disease, and a dire lack of supplies. Yet, they emerge stronger and more disciplined, thanks to the training and leadership of Prussian officer Baron von Steuben. This transformation is critical to their success in the grueling battles that follow. In 1781, the war reaches its climax at Yorktown. Washington's forces, aided by the French Navy and the leadership of the Marquis de Lafayette, encircle British General Cornwallis. Trapped, Cornwallis surrenders, marking a decisive victory for the Americans. The Treaty of Paris in 1783 formally recognizes the United States' independence. The Revolutionary War is a story of resilience, unity, and the unbreakable spirit of a people yearning for freedom. It sends shockwaves around the world, inspiring other nations and leaving a legacy of liberty and self-determination that endures to this day. 2. The War of 1812, 1812 to 1815. 30 years after the American Revolution, tensions reignite between the United States and Britain in a conflict known as the War of 1812. The young United States, still defining its identity, faces new challenges. Imagine the vast Atlantic Ocean, where British warships patrol, intercepting American vessels. British forces are engaged in a massive conflict with Napoleonic France, and to bolster their navy, they begin forcibly recruiting American sailors, a practice called impressment. This blatant disregard for American sovereignty ignites outrage. Meanwhile, in the Northwest Territory, British support for Native American tribes resisting U.S. expansion further strains relations. These tribes, led by leaders like Tecumseh, are determined to defend their homelands, and British weaponry bolsters their resistance. President James Madison, bowing to pressure from war hawks in Congress, declares war on Britain, marking the start of the War of 1812. Early battles prove difficult for the US, which lacks the resources and military experience of Britain. In 1814, British forces even managed to capture Washington, D.C., setting fire to the White House and Capitol. First Lady Dolly Madison famously saves a portrait of George Washington, symbolizing American pride and resilience in the face of destruction. Yet, the American spirit endures. The turning point arrives with the defense of Fort McHenry. For 25 hours, British ships bombard the fort, but when dawn breaks, the American flag still flies. This sight moves Francis Scott Key, who writes the poem that would later become the Star-Spangled Banner, a powerful tribute to the resilience of the American people. In the war's final major battle, General Andrew Jackson leads U.S. forces to a stunning victory at New Orleans. Though the Treaty of Ghent has already been signed, ending the war with no clear winner, this victory solidifies American pride and unity. The War of 1812 is a defining moment, proving to the world and to itself that the United States is here to stay. This conflict, though often overlooked, reinforces the young nation's independence and lays the foundation for its future on the world stage. 3. The Northwest Territory Dispute, 1783 to 1795. After achieving independence, the United States faces another significant struggle in the Northwest Territory, a region filled with promise and peril. Following the Treaty of Paris, Britain agrees to cede this vast land, encompassing present-day Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin, to the United States. However, British troops refuse to leave their forts in the region, undermining American sovereignty and providing arms to Native American tribes determined to protect their lands. The tribes, united in a confederation led by warriors like Little Turtle of the Miami and Blue Jacket of the Shawnee, engage in fierce resistance against American settlers moving westward. As tensions escalate, the U.S. government realizes that securing the territory is vital to its expansion and prosperity. In 1791, General Arthur St. Clair leads U.S. forces into the region, but they suffer a devastating defeat at the hands of the Native Confederation, one of the worst losses in American military history. Determined to assert control, President George Washington sends General Anthony Wayne to lead a well-trained army into battle. Known for his discipline and tenacity, Wayne earns the nickname Mad Anthony. Wayne's forces engaged the Native Confederation at the Battle of Fallen Timbers in 1794. After a hard-fought battle, the U.S. emerges victorious. The following year, the Treaty of Greenville is signed, ceding much of Ohio to the United States and opening the Northwest Territory for settlement. However, this victory comes at a high cost for Native American tribes, who lose their ancestral lands and face devastating changes to their way of life. The Northwest Territory dispute solidifies the U.S.'s commitment to westward expansion, but it also highlights the tragic consequences of that expansion for Native American communities. It is a turning point, demonstrating the lengths the U.S. will go to secure its vision of manifest destiny. The belief that Americans are destined to spread across the continent. 4. The Chesapeake Leopard Affair, 1807. Our next story unfolds on the high seas and highlights the tensions brewing between Britain and the United States. It's June 1807, and the USS Chesapeake, an American frigate, is preparing for a peaceful voyage from Virginia. Suddenly, the British warship HMS Leopard approaches. British officers demand to board the Chesapeake to search for deserters from the Royal Navy, but Captain James Barron refuses, standing firm on American sovereignty. In response, the Leopard opens fire, killing 3 American sailors and wounding several others. Outgunned, Captain Barron has no choice but to surrender. British sailors board the Chesapeake and take 4 men, claiming them as deserters. This brazen assault on American vessel sparks national outrage. In cities across the country, protests erupt, and citizens call for retaliation. President Thomas Jefferson, however, chooses a different path. Recognizing the US is not yet ready for war, he imposes an embargo on British trade, halting American exports in an attempt to pressure Britain economically. While the embargo is intended as a peaceful form of resistance, it backfires, severely hurting American businesses and failing to sway British policy. Though the Chesapeake Leopard affair does not lead directly to war, it deepens the distrust between Britain and the US, fueling the anger that would eventually lead to the War of 1812. This incident underscores the young nation's struggle for respect and its resolve to defend its sovereignty. 5. The Oregon Boundary Dispute, 1846. Now, let's journey west to the rugged and breathtaking Oregon Territory, a land stretching from the Rocky Mountains to the Pacific Ocean. This region, rich in resources and unspoiled beauty, is claimed by both the United States and Britain, but it remains sparsely populated and lacks a clear boundary. By the 1830s and 1840s, however, thousands of American settlers traveled the Oregon Trail, lured by the promise of fertile land and new opportunities. This wave of migration sparks the American public's determination to claim Oregon for the Union. The sentiment of manifest destiny drives Americans to believe that it is their God-given right to expand across the continent. Soon, a bold slogan rings out: 54 degrees 40 or fight, a demand for the US to claim the territory up to latitude 54 degrees 40. As settlers move in, outnumbering British fur traders and establishing towns, President James K. Polk faces mounting pressure to secure Oregon as part of the United States. Polk knows that insisting on the 54 degrees 40 line could lead to war with Britain, a risk he's reluctant to take. After intense negotiations, the two nations reach a compromise. In 1846, they agree to divide the Oregon Territory along the 49th parallel, with the northern portion becoming part of British Canada, and the southern part joining the United States. The Oregon Treaty allows America to expand westward without resorting to armed conflict. This peaceful resolution is a victory for diplomacy, demonstrating that two powerful nations can settle territorial disputes without bloodshed. However, for the Native American tribes of the region, this new boundary disrupts traditional lands and trade routes, signaling a future of forced displacement and hardship as America's westward expansion accelerates. 6. The Trent Affair, 1861. Fast forward to 1861, during one of America's darkest times, the Civil War. As the Union and Confederacy battle over the future of the nation, a diplomatic crisis with Britain nearly pulls the United States into a second conflict. The Confederacy, seeking support for its cause, sends two diplomats, James Mason and John Slidell, on a mission to Britain and France to gain recognition and potential aid. The two diplomats set sail on a British mail ship, the Trent, believing that traveling under a neutral flag will ensure their safe passage. However, as the Trent crosses the Atlantic, it is intercepted by the USS San Jacinto. Acting independently, Captain Charles Wilkes boards the Trent and arrests the Confederate envoys, bringing them back to the United States. News of the seizure reaches Britain, and public outrage is immediate. Many Britons see this as a violation of their neutrality and call for war. Britain demands the immediate release of Mason and Slidell, and troops are sent to Canada, ready to respond if diplomatic measures fail. In the United States, Captain Wilkes is celebrated as a hero, but President Abraham Lincoln faces a difficult decision. Already consumed by a brutal civil war, Lincoln realizes that a war with Britain would be catastrophic. With diplomatic finesse, Lincoln diffuses the crisis, agreeing to release the Confederate envoys and avoid further escalation. Lincoln's famous statement, "One war at a time," becomes a symbol of the careful diplomacy that prevents disaster. The Trent affair is a pivotal moment, showing the importance of restraint and diplomacy, even in times of national turmoil. It marks a turning point in US-British relations, as both countries recognize the value of maintaining peace and stability, despite the pressures of wartime. This incident ultimately strengthens the understanding between the two nations, laying groundwork for future cooperation. 7. The Fenian Raids, 1866 to 1871. After the American Civil War, a unique conflict arises along the US-Canada border. The Fenian Brotherhood, a group of Irish-American veterans who fought in the Civil War, dreams of freeing Ireland from British rule. These Fenians believe they can strike at Britain by attacking its colony, Canada. Their plan is audacious: if they can seize Canadian territory, they might leverage Britain to negotiate Irish independence. In 1866, the Fenians launch a series of cross-border raids into Canada. Armed with leftover Civil War weapons and driven by fervent nationalism, they carry out attacks, including a brief victory at the Battle of Ridgeway. However, the US government, aiming to maintain peaceful relations with Britain, intervenes, arresting the leaders and shutting down further raids. Although the Fenian raids fail to achieve their ultimate goal, they have lasting consequences. In Canada, the threat of invasion highlights the need for unity and self-defense, fueling support for Confederation in 1867. For the United States, the raids underscore the importance of controlling its borders and preventing rogue groups from destabilizing international relations. The Fenian raids are a fascinating episode, illustrating how deeply personal ambitions and nationalist dreams can influence broader political landscapes. Though the Fenians do not achieve Irish independence, their actions impact North American history, contributing to Canada's emergence as a unified nation. 8. The Alabama Claims, 1869 to 1872. Following the Civil War, tensions resurfaced between the United States and Britain over the actions of the British-built ship CSS Alabama. During the war, Britain, despite officially remaining neutral, allowed the Confederacy to purchase and outfit several warships in British shipyards. The Alabama, one of the most infamous of these ships, wreaks havoc on Union merchant vessels, disrupting American trade and costing the Union millions of dollars in damages. After the war, the United States holds Britain accountable, arguing that by allowing Confederate ships to operate from British ports, Britain prolonged the war and inflicted significant economic harm on the Union. Instead of escalating the dispute, both nations agree to a novel solution: international arbitration. In 1871, a tribunal is convened in Geneva, Switzerland, to settle the issue. This is a historic moment in diplomacy, as it marks one of the first uses of international arbitration to resolve a major dispute. After careful deliberation, the tribunal rules in favor of the United States, ordering Britain to pay $15.5 million in damages. Known as the Alabama Claims, this decision not only resolves the issue but also establishes a precedent for peaceful conflict resolution. The Alabama Claims mark a critical point in US-British relations. Both nations show a commitment to diplomacy over conflict, fostering a new era of cooperation. This peaceful resolution sets a powerful example for the international community, illustrating that even deep grievances can be settled without resorting to war. It paves the way for closer ties between the US and Britain, laying the foundation for the strong alliance that would emerge in the 20th century. 9. The Venezuelan Crisis, 1895. By the end of the 19th century, the United States has grown more assertive on the world stage, particularly in Latin America. In 1895, a territorial dispute between Venezuela and British Guiana threatens to pull the United States into another confrontation with Britain. Venezuela, struggling to establish clear borders, turns to the United States for support, citing the Monroe Doctrine, an American policy that opposes European interference in the Western Hemisphere. President Grover Cleveland steps in, demanding that Britain accept arbitration to resolve the border dispute peacefully. Initially, Britain resists, viewing the US demand as an overreach. However, as tensions rise and the possibility of war looms, Britain reconsiders. Partly motivated by concerns about its global empire and potential conflicts with other European powers, Britain ultimately agrees to arbitration. The peaceful resolution of the Venezuelan crisis reinforces the Monroe Doctrine, solidifying the US position as a dominant power in the Western Hemisphere. For the first time, the United States asserts itself as a regional protector, standing up to a European power to defend a neighboring country. This crisis marks a significant shift in US foreign policy, setting a tone for future interventions in Latin America. The Venezuelan crisis also symbolizes a new chapter in US-British relations. Both nations recognize the benefits of cooperation over confrontation, leading to a deeper understanding and paving the way for the special relationship that would emerge in the next century. 10. World War II Lend-Lease Program, 1941. Our final story brings us to one of the most crucial periods in world history, World War II. By 1941, Britain stands alone against the relentless onslaught of Nazi Germany. Its cities are bombed night after night in the Blitz, and its resources are stretched to the breaking point. Across the Atlantic, the United States remains officially neutral, but the American public and leadership cannot ignore Britain's plight. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, recognizing the dangers of a Nazi-dominated Europe, seeks a way to support Britain without directly involving the US in the war. The solution is the Lend-Lease program, a bold initiative that provides Britain with essential war materials, weapons, ammunition, ships, and food. Through Lend-Lease, millions of dollars in aid flow across the Atlantic, bolstering Britain's defenses and helping it withstand the Nazi assault. Roosevelt famously compares the program to lending a garden hose to a neighbor whose house is on fire. For Britain, Lend-Lease is nothing short of a lifeline, enabling the nation to continue its fight until the United States officially joins the war after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The Lend-Lease program transforms the relationship between the US and Britain. No longer mere allies of convenience, they become partners with a shared vision of a world free from tyranny. This program marks the beginning of what Winston Churchill would later call the special relationship, a bond that would endure through the Cold War and beyond. Together, the US and Britain emerge from World War II as the leaders of the Allied victory, shaping the post-war world order. The spirit of Lend-Lease lives on in their partnership, serving as a reminder of the power of unity in the face of common threats. This final conflict brings the story full circle, from rivalry to one of the strongest alliances in history. As we look back on these 10 historic conflicts, we see a remarkable evolution in the relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom. Each struggle, from the Revolutionary War to World War II, tested both nations' strength, values, and resilience. Yet through each challenge, the seeds of a profound partnership were sown. Today, the United States and the United Kingdom stand not as enemies but as close allies, united by a commitment to democracy, freedom, and peace. Their journey from rivalry to partnership is a powerful testament to the potential for transformation in even the most challenging relationships. The US-UK alliance, forged through conflict and refined by diplomacy, remains a beacon of hope, proving that unity can overcome division, and that allies can emerge from even the deepest conflicts. These 10 conflicts have shaped not only two nations but the course of global history, reminding us that from the ashes of rivalry can rise a partnership that inspires the